Welcome to the OStudio podcast, where we delve into the art of feeling better. My name is Matty and OStudio is a recovery and wellbeing franchise that's here to help you relax, recover, and improve. OStudio is a recovery and wellbeing business, and most of our episodes are focused on the recovery and wellbeing side. But today's episode leans into the business of what we do. So here is 10 lessons from 20 years in business. Enjoy.
What do we say here? Matty Lovell. Welcome to the...
Hell of a start.
Should I clap?
No? Let's hope this is all included in the start. Should be. Right, welcome back to another episode of the OStudio podcast today. Just you and I, Tim. How are you, mate?
Yes. Ready to go, mate.
Out of 10? Out of 10?
9. Strong 9.
Yeah.
Yep. You?
Yeah, I would say 9 too, actually.
Yeah.
Yep. Feeling really good.
Strong 9 or a...
I don't think you can say 9 and not be strong. Like, I think if a 9 is like it's almost as strong as you can get. So yeah, I'd say I'm a strong 9.
Like it. Nice.
And look, today, like I know the sort of idea of the podcast is explore the art of feeling better. And OStudio is a wellness business, and there are two things there, like wellness and recovery, sort of what we do, but the business is the other side of it. And so, upon realizing that both you and I sort of got into business at the same time, and have both sort of recently passed a 10-year anniversary running various different businesses, we thought might be interesting to do 10 lessons from 20 years in business. So collectively, we've spent 20 years owning and running businesses. So we could jump through 10 lessons. So we've got 5 each. I've got no idea what you've prepared. You've got no idea why I prepared. But I think we just go one for one and roll through the things that we've learned from our, business experience in the last sort of decade or so. So do you want to go first?
Yeah, straight into it.
Yeah.
So I like acronyms and I like sort of try and consolidate things down into as many things. And my acronym's PRIME. And so I'll start with the P, obviously. So the P is product. And so I suppose for me, the product is what your business is, what you're selling, it's what you're doing, it's everything that goes in and around it. And I suppose the product is more than what you sell. It's not just the session that people come in and out of. It's everything that sits in and around it. So it's your mission, it's your vision, it's your values, it's your operating, it's the way you do what you do. And so that ultimately is the product. And I feel sometimes, for me, I've overlooked the importance of all the little things that need to be right to make sure that the product that we're selling is fit for purpose and lands well on a market, et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess my advice to anyone that's out there looking at doing anything in business is really understand what it is that you're selling, why it is that you're selling it, the way that the purpose of why you exist, the values are the lens through which you make all your decisions. Like for me, understanding what we are and how we do things and what we sell and what we offer and why people would choose to engage is like the foundational principle. Yeah. So making sure that you nail your product is step one.
Why do you think that helps you?
Why does it help me personally?
Well, so I agree with you, actually. I say, understanding those core things of who you are and what you offer is important. But I would just, the only thing I'm curious about is, what's the pragmatic advantage that you have by knowing that in terms of running a business?
Because I think as business owners, you have 1,000 things to manage at all times. And if you're having to try and respond to a question or figure something out or decide on a strategy or decide on whether money should be spent there or whether you should have more people here or not. It's like if you don't know what you're making that decision for, then you're just shooting in the wind all the time. So having a really clear understanding of who you are as a product, as an organization, as an entity, and so, for example, it's like one thing would be if you wouldn't be proud as a consumer of that product, is the product really fit? If people can't look at something and say, oh, that is OStudio or that is X, all of those little things matter over time. It creates a consistency and it creates something that ultimately I think, and that's why a big part of it is trust that I'll talk about soon. It's people know what to expect, which is foundational. Yeah.
So really it guides decision making is kind of what you're saying.
Guides decision making and everything, who we're recruiting, what's the marketing message? So what's how do we is an extra towel going to be in there or not? You know,
Yeah.
like all those things can
Yeah.
only be made a decision if you really understand
Yeah.
why you do what you do.
Yeah, because when you whittle it down to it, the difference between a business doing well and not is actually just the decisions that are made. So, like having a framework which helps guide and frame the decisions that you're making, of course, is going to be a no-brainer, really, in terms of your business succeeding or not.
Yeah, we could probably talk about everything that makes up the product,
Yeah.
you know, over thousands of episodes. But for me, that's like the foundation.
Cool.
What do you got first?
So the first one I have actually is P as well, but it's people, people, people. And I think when you look at business or running a business, it can be easy to get caught up in numbers, revenue, profit, calls to action, return on investment, like all these things, these sort of metrics that you're trying to sort of base things on. But I think like when you whittle it back down to everything, business is just people. Like on the other side of every decision is a human being making a decision, whether that's to buy your product, to engage with an ad, to come back, to pay more money, to whatever it is. And so like I think that I remember my father-in-law, who sort of mentored me all the way through, just said to me like I said, is this person, are they a good business person? And he was like, well, they're just great with people, and people's just business. And the more I thought about it, the more it became relevant to me that it can be easy to forget that sometimes when you're looking at a spreadsheet and you're looking at data from your business that you're running. Like every one on there is a human being that's made a decision to do something. So recognizing that that's really, really important. The second thing is like in terms of people is like, I guess people are, most businesses have staff, and so people are, in terms of your team, are your greatest opportunity, but also your greatest challenge as an owner or a manager. A great staff member makes all your problems go away. A poisonous staff member will ruin your culture. And so I think that I don't know how to sort of synthesize it down really, but it's just that understanding the value of business is all just people. Whether it's team members, customers, contractors, marketers, partners, competitors, it's all just human beings. And so trying to remember that and trying to have that at the forefront of your mind when you're making decisions or acting in a certain way, I think is really powerful.
How would that relate? So if people are so important, which I agree, couldn't agree more. But how does that change the way you do things? Is it on recruitment? Is it in support of your team? Is it like, how does that, what have you learned is really important to make sure that the people are
Yeah. What does it mean? So I think first of all, if you understand that it's a person on the other side of a decision, you start to look at it a bit differently. You get a bit more curious about why that's happening. But I guess what's maybe of most value is, I think in terms of recruitment, because I'm talking about leverage a bit later on, but like good people make all your problems disappear, and I think
and create opportunity that you didn't even know existed.
Absolutely, and so I think generally if you own the business, or you're a manager or a high level, the things that get to you are generally problems, and if you hire people, less problems get to you, and it absolutely gives you more time to focus on that. And my father-in-law also said to me, like, business would be easy if it wasn't for people, and it's so true, because they're the only bits that end up really complicating things too much. So I think if you understand the value of attracting, retaining, and keeping good people engaged in your business, the upside is exponentially great. At the same time, having someone that is not adding value, or in fact is detracting from culture or team or effort or whatever it is, has the same effect in reverse. There can be a huge impact if someone's not the right person.
Well, it's also, without going into too much more on it, as a business owner or a manager, like understanding how you can get the best out of your people is really, really important. Like not everyone's the same. Like the same message said in one way to one person and heard in the same way by someone, they land completely differently.
Yeah.
And so I just think as you say, like really understanding that everything is just people, really taking time to connect with people, understand people, and know how as leaders that we need to change the way we do things to suit. Because if we're shooting for outcomes, we want to make sure that that relationship and communication side of it is done properly.
Yeah, and people follow people, and people do things and buy things off people they like, know, and trust. And so, keeping that at the forefront of your mind when you're trying to make a decision, I think is really important. And, I hope these, I've come across this idea of unteachable lessons recently, and it's probably a whole other podcast, but it's like...
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's really blowing my mind. It's like... this stuff, someone could have, I probably could have listened to this podcast 10 years ago and still made all the mistakes I was going to make over the next 10 years. I'm not sure if these are teachable lessons, but like...
I know what you're saying.
I think there's an amount of experiential learning that happens by going through it, but like I think that, if I had listened to this, it definitely would have helped, but I still would have made... I don't know how teachable some of these lessons are. Yeah,
no, I couldn't agree more. My second one, once again, so we've built the product, and product being the culture, the vision, the values, what we're actually doing and how we're trying to do it. All those things are built into what that product makes up. The next thing that you really need, I think, for a successful business is you need reach. You can have the best product in the world, the best purpose, the best team. If you're not seen, heard, felt, you're irrelevant. And I know that sounds different, but it's true. If people don't know about you, they're never going to engage with you. You're never going to have a successful business. And so reach is really, really important. And further to that, I guess, it's reach grown really organically is a lot stronger because it builds real trust. Like just being a flash pan, someone saying OStudio pop up somewhere is not real reach. Reach is built off like real trust. You've talked about this a little bit too, but reach can show. We may be saying, "Hey, look, we've got a fantastic community here," but you can't fake community. It's got to be real, and so it doesn't take away from the fact that you need to be out there, you need to be seen, and that the brand needs to be looked, touched, and felt. But I suppose the learning for me is like you spend money on really good advertising with a really good piece of content that really reflects what you are. It has real impact. It's that simple. And so I suppose I undervalued for a long time the importance of really good reach and how that can drive a successful business. And so once again, just being another voice in the market that's loud and is not adding value is not what I'm talking about here. But if you create a fantastic product that's making real impact and you're doing it a really good way, the next step that you have to go to is get really good reach and as I say, build real trust in what you can do. It makes sense. It makes sense. Are yours all in order like this? Because you have two a really good order so far. Like understand who you are. Yeah, they are. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, mine are a bit more all over the show. Which is good. Yeah. So the second one I've got is be courageous, and I've got the deep end is a great place to learn to swim. And firstly, I want to caveat this by saying like business is not for everyone, and I don't think everyone should go into business. But like, why not? Because I agree. Why not? Why? Well, it probably aligns with my fourth one a little bit, which is I don't want to give that away, just yet. But like, it's there's a lot of uncertainty with business, and some people crave certainty. It's their highest value is certainty, and so like, owning a business has a huge upside, also has a huge downside, and so I think. You have to recognise whether that's the right thing for you. It's a different set of skills. The E-Myth is a great book, and it talks about, and I've talked about this a lot of times, but like the skill of building is different to the skill of running a building company. Almost entirely, you could run a building company and not know how to put a fence up, because they're two different skills. And so like, I think that sometimes people just love building fences and they just, or houses or whatever you build, whatever you make or whatever you produce. Like sometimes people just love whatever it is. It doesn't mean you should do a business doing that thing because it's a completely different skill set. And often running a building company, for example, just out of, you can work with anything, but like
you often do less building than you ever imagined because you're just dealing with people, organising.
It's so true, and because I agree with you 100%. Not everyone's not made to want to create and drive, run a business. Then the pressure and stuff that comes with that, like the flip. So I put that there. The flip side of that is I can't ever see not wanting to personally.
Yeah, neither.
Because it's like, yes, I know there's more risk. Yes, I know there's more challenges. Yes, it's the filter comes through, but ultimately it's like you get to create. You're responsible for what you're creating. And I love that creative pursuit, and I love everything that comes alongside it. If I'm, being able to get something to really align to something that I really care about. That in and of itself, I think, is fantastic. And once again, that's not because I'm a control freak. It's because I think there's an opportunity here, and I really want it done really well. So being able to have real influence on what that actually looks and feels like is just. And the reality is too. Like, why do you get into business? Yes, one is to create impact. At the same time, I think for me, having freedom of time, freedom of opportunity, freedom of money, freedom of location, all those things can only really come if you are the sort of the puppeteer of what you're choosing to do, if that makes sense as well. And you can only get that through running your own business.
I completely agree, and that's what my fourth point is sort of all around. And so and the way I've put it is like the deep end's a great place to learn to swim. It's like you never feel completely ready. It's like having a child. I've sort of the analogy I've got here is like, I don't think you ever I'm perfectly ready to have a newborn in my arms today. Like I don't think, it's like, and so I think it's the same with business is that there has to be a little bit of courage there, and whatever you do, it's probably going to feel like the deep end because, no matter how many buildings you've built, if you start running a building company, you're going to feel like you're in the deep end, and so all I'm saying is don't resist that. You've got to be courageous. You've got to be willing to take a step and be like, there's some unknowns here, but I'm into it, and I think that, if you haven't run a business before, and even if you have run a business before, I've run different businesses, different industries, and all of a sudden it's like, what the hell does that mean? I've never even heard that acronym. Have I been in business for 5 years and haven't even heard of someone talk about this before? Because it was a different style of business. So I think that there's always going to be a lot of unknowns in business, and so my idea or tip, I guess, is just that you're never going to feel ready. It's never going to be you've got to lean into it. You've got to be a little bit courageous. It's going to feel like the deep end, but I reckon, I know you always say pressure makes diamonds. I just feel like when it's on for me, when I've had to make things work, it's you surprise yourself, and we're all capable of far more than we think. And
it's so true. It's funny. I was just thinking about something as you were speaking then, but you talk about you got to be prepared with uncertainty. You have to be. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I know that sounds like a cliche, but it does. In fact, more than that for me, when I see anyone certain of anything, I always how can you be that certain? How can you be that certain about anything? Because the more I learn about something, the more uncertain I become almost. It's almost it's the more information, everything feeds into to so many other touch points. It's almost like you've just got to be prepared to be really uncertain. And in my mind, it's get a lean on and just take a step forward, and then another one, and then another one, and then often the pavement's just in time. It's there. Yeah.
So being courageous and accepting that you're probably going to be in the deep end, but that's a great place to learn to swim.
Yeah,
it's my second one.
So my third. So I've talked about building the product, now the reach. So you've got great reach. The third real key learning for me in OStudio. So it's the I is income. So the I is income. Obviously, sales, revenue. That's the driving force of any business. Without that, you can't succeed. And so you could have the best product in the world, have incredible reach and trust and that thing, but if you don't have the right systems and processes around sales and around managing money, then you're going to run out of money or you're going to fail very quickly too. And so just everything around that has been a real learning curve for us at OStudio. The way we ran our first facility was a bit like a testing ground, what works here. But getting the foundation right, we've talked about our membership pricing. You can, once again, you have fantastic product, but if you don't have your pricing right or you don't have the right membership options, you're not going to be anywhere near as successful as what you can be. And so just understanding how all that works, what is the way to sell your product really effectively that's on brand, that aligns with the way you want to do things. But that I suppose that in a nutshell has been a big learning is around how do we make sure that it's not just we're doing something fantastic for people, don't get me wrong. At the same time, it's a business that needs to have really good systems and processes around how that's done. So having the right pricing structures, having the right sales campaigns, having the right training and implementation in place to move people into memberships, etc. That there is a skill.
Yeah,
that's a skill that I've seen the value of, especially over these last sort of 5 years. Yeah.
And so often you look at a business from externally and you just think that like that's just been accidentally. You've just come up with it, like that's how they're going to structure pricing, or that's what the price is. But like, yeah, I think that when you open the back end, you realise that like there's a lot of choice you've got to make there, and a lot of decisions you've got to make, and how we're going to price something. And I think also, financial understanding of a business is not a skill that lots of people have. Like again, it's the building company. Like it's like they've been really good at building houses. But like understanding, like making sure you're managing cash flow, making sure that you've got, enough to pay this, and when people are paying you, and what's the margin on doing this, or the profit on that. Like it can be an area that you put your head in the sand a bit sometimes. Yeah,
and even just understanding the drivers of it and making sure that you've got the right information to make good decisions around that. For example. Like I think a lot of people, me included, historically have been like, we don't really know our numbers. We don't really know how many people we need in. We don't really know, what we should be doing to move those people into packs or into memberships. We don't really understand, what does success look like? What doesn't look like? What are the things that we need to keep an eye out for? So really understanding what drives revenue, what are the behaviours that drive revenue, and being able to accurately point at that and say, okay, there's a gap here. So therefore, we can look at doing this. Yeah, you know what I mean. And but even once it comes back to the same point that you've sort of talked about a few times too, like the people are in and around that. I've had staff that are just fantastic at selling memberships, for example. Same product, same reach, same service delivery, but they sell heaps of memberships. Why is that? That's a skill, So it's like, okay, cool. If that's, and once again, this feels like we're not selling chocolate here. That that's we're selling things to people that are making genuine impact on their lives. Should be something they're really passionate about selling. So how can we scale that? How can we train on that? How can we develop that? Because once again, we know that we're trying to create a sustainable, successful business that's having impact for a long period of time. So the focus on that whole income area is really important.
This one's a bit, it's not long-winded, but it's sort of multi-level. But it's understand and utilize the leverage as much as you can. So, this is an amalgamation of things I've learned from lots of different people. But like fundamentally, leverage is when your output, the output you receive, is greater than the input you put in. Okay, and so like I'm sure there's other types of leverage, but I've got like 5 different types of leverage that I think can make a real difference in most businesses, and that if you can understand what they are and increase the leverage you have as much as possible, it increases the likelihood of success in your business. And so the first one is, no surprise, is people. And so I've tried to think of an analogy here which I can use through all 5 of them. And for start off, I want to say that when you think saying people as leverage is a negative connotation, but let me get through. And so, like, let's say you're a masseuse and you run a massage business, right? Now, zero leverage is if you put in 1 hour of effort massaging someone and you get paid for 1 hour of massaging, right? So there's zero leverage, and the input and the output are equal, all right? And so an example of leverage with people would be like, well, you could hire another masseuse. Okay, and then you can put in 1 hour effort but do 2 massages for the same hour of time. So the level of output is now double to what the input is. Okay, and what I'm meaning around, like, don't think of it negatively, is like having people as leverage is like, you still, like, that person's still remunerated well, and you've got to create a culture and environment they like being a part of, and you've got to add to the value of their life and their family and all those other bits and pieces. So it's not like you're taking advantage of someone, but like in terms of a business, leverage that you have with people is one of the best ways that most businesses have leverage. They hire more staff, hire more builders, able to do
or train and develop each of those staff as well.
So that's the second one. So the first one is people. The second one is systems, and so like, can you follow a system which or create a system that can be followed, so you're not having to manage everything so well, for example. So training is one of those. So you could take your masseuse, and you could train them more, and or you could have a sales process that you train them in, for example. So the process might be like, when you've finished the massage, this is the process you follow, and it might be like, it could be something around turning the room over, so you can trying to decrease the amount of time between massages. And so imagine if it was like, your turnaround time was 10 minutes and you could reduce it to 5 minutes, but you're doing you've got 5 masseuses doing 8 massages a day, how much time you save that you can then create income with. Or a sales training. So if you create a system that's like, everyone is asked to rebook when they leave, like how many different the exponential return on that one little tweak could be. If you've got 5 massages doing 8 massages, 5 masseuses doing 8 massages a day, and all of them can increase their rebooking rate from 10% to 50%, is an exponential return for the business. Does that make sense? So systems the next one. Capital is the next form of leverage, and so and it's essentially using money to create outcomes that exceed the cost of it. So it's exactly the same as over. So like marketing, for example, like if you've got a good marketing system and you can put $100 into marketing and that sells 3 $100 massages, you've got a 3-to-1 leverage on that capital that you're using. And so that could be whatever you want to spend money on. So that's quite a broad one. The next one is media. And I've got podcasts, videos, content, anything like this. And the reason is because you can generally do it once and it can be reused lots of times. And so, like, for example, you could, like, we record a podcast once and it gets listened to indefinitely. How many times in the future, we don't know. But it's 1 hour of effort for us for thousands of hours of listening from other people. So there's leverage on it. And so that's media. And the last one is software. And as I was thinking more about this, it's kind of software and hardware a little bit as well. But like, so for example, like software might be
AI.
Yeah. But like, say, this is very, really practical. You might have to book a massage with you. You might have to ring up the massage business and say, "Hey, I'd like to book a massage." So then you've got to take a booking, and then that takes your time away from doing other stuff. And so, like, if you had an online booking system that just like could automate it, you didn't have to worry about answering the phone anymore. That would be software that would then you'd have you'd set it up once, and disproportionate return on the effort it would take to set it up. You could make sure that everyone who comes in and has a massage with you gets an email encouraging them to rebook again, or a discount to rebook, and like that's automated. So you set it up once and then it's done forever. So it's leverage. The time it's taking you to implement that is disproportionately returned by the amount of times that it uses. And I guess hardware is kind of this could work the same as well. You could like, for example, like it's just really basic, like a leverage is like a washing machine. Like if you could wash the towels by hand, or you can just put them in the machine, press go, then you can go massage someone for an hour while the machine's washing your towels. And so I think if you can understand different types of leverage in your business, because there's only generally one of you, there's always only one of you. You might have a partner, but different. And so like, how can you maximize the return on your effort and input so that it best affects a business? And a lot of those will overlap. Like you could have a system that's sales. You could have, capital could be around people. Like that. They're not all isolated or individual. But I think in a business, if you are understanding what leverage is, and you're trying as much as you can to leverage people, systems, capital, media, and software, it really puts you in a strong position to succeed. And I wish I'd known that earlier.
It's so good. It's so good. And one thing that I think that frames this quite nicely, and you've spoken about this a little bit previously as well, but because each of those things, they require decisions to get to that. So like, decisions on what you do for people, or the systems that you create, or where you're employing capital, or where you're choosing to spend time on media. And I think a mistake I made previously was being a little bit flippant with decisions. You know what I mean? But if you want to create maximum leverage, you've got to make really good decisions. So what are you doing for yourself to make sure that you're in a mindset, you've got the information that you need to make good decisions, so you're making really good leverage decisions? Like one of the questions you used to ask me all the time when we'd do things is, if you only had 4 hours in this week, where would you spend it? That's a really good way to really quickly say, like, what are the things that I can do with only this amount of time that's going to have the leverage, the most result? And so everything all comes back to, once again, making really good decisions.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And so the decision you're making is, what's the best return on my time?
Exactly.
Yeah. And it can be very easy when you're running a business to get caught up in things that are urgent but not important.
Yeah.
And so, what generally has the biggest long-term return is doing things that are important, not necessarily urgent. The customer that's emailed you and wants an answer this afternoon is urgent. Going through that email that every customer gets after they've just come and had a session with you is really important, but not necessarily urgent. So you keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, but you're not realizing that if you actually played with that and tweaked with it and tried a different offer and explored how that could change and what happens if you put a picture here or a different subject line, you actually get far more engagement. And if something like that could increase the amount of bookings you have by 3 or 4%, and it takes an hour for you to do, and then you never have to think about it again, it's huge leverage. So where can you put your time and effort to have the biggest return on value for the business?
Yeah. It's one of the, Elaine, one of the things that she's given me is that quadrant, that important and urgent, not important. Yeah, what does that go to? Yeah, the important,
not urgent and urgent, and important and not important.
Yeah, exactly, and where they sort of fit, and understanding actually this sits here at the moment, because ultimately what you want to be able to get to as quick as possible is important but not urgent. That's when you're in that mindset of planning. That's when you're in the mindset of actually I'm making decisions that are going to have impact down there. If you're constantly operating in the situation of important and urgent, you're just reactive all the time. And sometimes that's required and it's needed, and you need to get those things off your plate so that you can get into the important, not urgent work. Yeah,
absolutely. And ideally, the more leverage you have, the more time you can spend on important stuff.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So my next one, so I've got the product, we've built the reach, we've got the income sitting there, how that all works, and making sure we're driving that forward. The fourth one that I've got here is, so M is a machine, is the mechanics. And so it's really simple to what you've talked about. It's really similar, to what you've just spoken about. Like, when I first started, I thought systems would, suppress creativity, and that I wouldn't, making things, consistent, and we're having this meeting at this time, and we always do this the same way, or we're looking at this, that having systems remove the ability to be agile and adapt and be creative and would somehow not be as good. Like, I've just come full circle on that. Like, there's no way. Like, having a really good machine in play for your business allows you the freedom to make really good decisions, or tweak or evolve or implement. If you're having to keep on reinventing the wheel all the time because it's not a machine, it's not a well-oiled machine, then you're just chasing your tail. So having a really good understanding of the system or the machine that you're creating within this ecosystem of business, that systems set you free.
Yeah, they do.
They really, really do. And so, once again, we could probably talk about that alone for a long period of time. But I think you've got to have that end in mind of, like, if this decision can be systematized or can be captured and learnt so that we're not making those same decisions again, then you should capture it. You should build it into a system that you can point to. It's like, how do you make it that the business is not so reliant on you to do everything all the time? The only way you can do that is by building a good system and training well and stuff inside that.
And I think it comes a little bit back towards people, because you build a system generally it's for people to operate in, and because people are all so different, you could say, like, clean this room to like 20 different people, and their version of clean is complete for all 20 people is completely different. And so instead of saying, hey, go in and clean this room, it's like, hey, when you go in there, pull the water off the floor, pull the towels off, wipe this around here, pull them out, come back 3 minutes later, lay this out, put this here and here and here. Here's a photo of exactly how it should look when you leave. That's the machine. That's leverage. It means you don't have to go back in anymore and check that everything's laid out all right.
Yeah, like a really good example of an OStudio Christchurch. So there's just lots of these things that you need to do, once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, like water the plants, or like change the filters, or like take the towels downstairs because the towel delivery's coming. And so for a long time it was like, hey, like, have we watered the plants? Or we had a checklist of things that people would need to go and look at and check off as they did. Whereas the system that we ended up landing on, which I think was so much better, is your system is you clear your inbox. But what we had in the background is we had automated emails coming to the inbox saying, water the plants. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? And so that would come up once a week. That would come into someone's inbox. So I don't have to be anywhere else. I don't have to go and check anything. It's just your job is you clear your inbox. And so if we had a clear inbox, everything's done. Yeah. Take the towels downstairs would come into an email inbox. And so that's right, I need to take the towel downstairs. But that system there removed so many other systems that needed to happen. It all came into one place, which freed people up to be able to spend more time with customers. So, and do more of what we wanted the team to be doing. So like really trying to think about the system, the mechanics behind something.
And the return on a little bit of thought and time there is exponential. Like a funny example I've just thought of when you're telling that is like our bins used to always go out on a Monday night and get taken in on Tuesday. And like I would always work late Monday nights, and so I'd put the bins out, but then I'd like come in on Tuesday and the bins were just always still out in the street, and like it would like the truck would leave them. Sometimes it'd be in the drive, customers were driving around them. It was a real pain. And so I just put a Outlook reminder on the computer. Just said bring the bins in. And after that day, I never ever had to bring the bins in.
Yeah.
And it sounds so obvious at the time, but just like that 20 seconds it take me to set that reminder, set it for every Tuesday morning forever. Like I would have done that 7 years ago.
Yep.
And 7 years, this bins are still never there on Tuesday morning because there's a reminder.
And the good thing about it being an Outlook reminder is because once again, you know that person's on Outlook. You know that your team are going to that place. If you have a checklist that sits somewhere else, you're creating another barrier. Or if you have a team, hey guys, we've got to make sure we take the bins in. You're relying on people to have to remember it. And it's like, so what's the thing that you can do that's going to make it the simplest thing? So like we used to run out of stock all the time. So what did we do? Every 4 days, hey, go and check the stock. You know what I mean? It's oh yeah, that's right, I need to go check the stock. Yeah. And it sounds obvious when you're working on the business, but when you're working in the business on a day-to-day level and you're busy, that can sometimes not be obvious. Yep.
My next one was sort of what I was alluding to before, I didn't want to say, but it's probably harder than you think, but also far more rewarding than you can ever imagine.
Yeah, so good.
And so like, I think a lot of things apply to this. Like I would say being a parent is probably the same. You can apply the same reasoning. Like it's probably going to be harder than you think, but it's also going to be greater than you could ever imagine. Yeah. And it's an unteachable lesson. Like it's how good it's going to feel. You can't tell someone who's not a parent how good being a parent is. Like they'll never get it. And I think it's the same as business. I think that, having a kid is bloody hard. Like raising kids is really hard. And being business can be really hard, like trying to figure out how this happens and supporting that person. This customer's upset and this person's done this and the staff member's here and that's happening. And you're just like, oh my God, like back when I was just working for myself, like it was really easy. So like there's probably going to be challenges that you haven't thought of. So it'll probably be harder than you think it will be, but also the upside is greater than you can ever imagine. And I've just learned that like some days, I'm just like, gosh, I've worked a corporate job for 5 years, just working for someone else, taking a wage and, not a heap of responsibility. And like, I did that and I was, it was easy, and going to business was far harder, but like the reward from the effort is something that is hard to, as a business owner, when you do something or you see a customer that's felt the impact of whatever you're offering, whatever, whether you're someone that bakes food and they've gone, this is the best thing I've ever eaten, or you build a house and you see you've built a home for a family or whatever it is, but you see the impact that your product or service is having on someone, like the feeling you get is like hard to describe. And then there's also like the business side of that as well. Is like when you make a decision in the business and you're like, right, I'm going to back this and we're going to do this, and there's a bit of risk here, but like I've got a gut instinct, or I believe in it. And then like you look back and you're like, man, like this is awesome, like this has worked, and like people are doing this and this is now going ahead, and like it's like that feeling is something that's really hard to explain to someone who hasn't had it before. And so It's probably going to be harder than you think, but it'll also be far more rewarding than you could ever imagine.
It's so, and that's why, like, my job and your job, that's why I love it more than anything. And, like, I loved running a community, running a studio. Like, I thought it was fantastic. You know, like, seeing the impact that you can have on the community. It's like, that's an adrenaline rush that, like, nothing else. But for what we're doing now as well, I feel more fulfillment from, which is supporting owners to do that. You know, like seeing Kate in Wellington and the care that she's put into, and the culture that she's created, and hearing the stories of what's going on there, and seeing how much joy it's bringing her. You know, that's like another level of we're allowing people to create their own business. You're not allowing, it's the wrong word. Empowering or supporting or whatever the word is, but seeing that play out, you know, and as you mentioned, it's exactly the same. It's harder than you could ever imagine, but more rewarding than you could ever sort of go through. And I agree with that unteachable lesson. It's like, it's one of those ones that you can hear all the things and read all the things and know, and people can tell you all the things, whereas it's not really until you've gone through it that you can really feel it.
Yeah. And it's like, when I left working on the boats, like, not many people, you know, leaving was a good boat, was you didn't do sort of thing, you know. And I remember the captain wrote in our going away card, boats are safest in the harbour, but that's not what boats are made for, you know. And it's kind of like this. It's like if you humans are made to overcome challenges, I think, you know, and business is a way to put yourself in a position where there's challenges you're to overcome, and it's if it's what you're built for, and you know if that's you, then like you're not, you know, I wasn't meant to stay in a corporate job and just work, you know, under a hierarchy of management for the rest of my life. It wasn't what I was made for, and I'm glad that I've done it, because it's far more rewarding than I ever could have thought.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So my last one, nailed the product. Got the reach right. We've got these systems around sales and income. We've built this machine. Like, the thing that underpins all that for me, really, like, it's E is energy. So energy is the invisible lever that determines everything. And especially as leaders, it's how we show up in our energy and how that's contagious. You know, well, energy is contagious everywhere. But I guess for me, the key learning is, you know, there'd be some weeks where I'd work 100 hours, you know, and I'm just going. And then all of a sudden, it's like my output's nowhere near what it should be. Like, I need to look after myself. I need to make sure that the way I am as a person, the business is a direct reflection of that almost. You know what I mean? And so it's really like, what is giving energy? What's taking energy? What are the things that I'm working on that I'm really good at, that I can really enhance, not just working on all the crap all the time, which can happen, you know, in leadership, where all the problems get filtered up to you, so all you're dealing with is the biggest problems. But being really conscious of your energy, what you're doing to replenish it, you know, sleeping well, eating well, making sure I'm training, making sure I'm getting my recovery, and making sure that I'm taking time for myself, and I'm filling my cup up with my family and my girls. And because, you know, there's thousands of things that you could choose to do all the time, but one thing I think is often, and me personally, the learning has been, I'll put myself last on that list, and actually, you know, put myself last thinking that I'm being selfless and putting the business first, or putting the family first. But just that real learning is actually, I have to put myself first, because if putting myself first is going to make me better for my family, better in my relationship. The business is going to perform better. The team around us are going to be more, I'm going to be a more enjoyable person to be around. I'm going to make better decisions, which is going to flow into everything else. And so I think the more senior the role anywhere I've seen, the harder it is to get this right, the harder it is to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position to do a really good job. And so, yeah, just understand. I mean, you've talked a little bit about it already, but the leverage of energy. You know, if you think about the best version of you and the worst version of you, who do you want to be operating as? You know, and so just understanding that really does underpin the rest.
My last one is relatively similar, but probably a little bit different. Now you've sort of explained it a bit more, but it is effort and attitude solve most challenges. And I just think, like, when you're the owner of a business, or even a manager, like, the things that filter up to you are just generally problems, challenges and problems. And so often they can seem like you haven't been here before, or I've never had to deal with something like this, or this is above my pay grade, or like I've got no idea what to do, or this can't be solved, or whatever it might be. But what I've learned, I think this applies to nearly everything. I don't think it's just business, but like your attitude is the way you come at the problem. Like if you don't think you can solve it, like of course you're not going to solve it. Like you're not going to put any effort into it because you don't believe it's possible. You know, right? And then, you know, so attitude is the compass, I guess. And if the compass is pointing in the right direction, then the accelerator is the effort that you put into it. And so, like, you know, how hard am I going to try here on this? And I think that if you come up with a challenge, or you're presented with an obstacle, like if you've got the right attitude towards it, and then you put in enough effort, you'll solve it. Because those are really almost the only two levers you have to pull. If you think about it, it's attitude. How am I thinking about this, and how much energy am I going to put into it? You know, and often, you know, when you put a bit of effort and energy into it, you make like micro progress. You know, or you figure out what the first step is. Like the first step, like if you've got a challenge, then we all just put it off, right? And you go, oh God, and the email just sits in your inbox and you can't think about it. And then finally it comes to the point, you're like, right, I actually need to do something here. You know, what's the first step? It's like, I probably need to ring this person, because, you know, and just say, hey, what would you do in this situation? And they're like, oh, well, I'd do this. And you're like, okay, well, that's, you know, now I need to put some effort in here. And so I think that sometimes we over exaggerate how big a problem can be and think that it's unsolvable. But with the change of attitude, and then that little bit of effort to make the first step, the next step becomes more obvious, and then, you know, eventually with enough effort, you look back and the challenge has been solved.
I couldn't agree more. I was speaking to a guy the other day, and he was talking about this study that came out of Harvard. It was around like execution will always trump strategy, always. You know, I think it was something like, you know, 70%. You know, it's like it's so much more important as the execution, but it's the same thing. Like as you've just talked about there, and strategy sounds like a big word. Like, what are we strategic direction? What are we choosing to do, and when and how? But right down to the decision. It's a simple decision itself. Like, how should I respond to this email, or what should I do about this decision? For me, there's two parts of it. There's the strategy part of it and the execution part of it. Often it's just making a decision and putting all your effort and energy behind that decision will end up being the right decision. You know, like we all get quite caught up in making the right decision, and then we don't follow through like we should. Whereas actually, it's almost like I understand. I'm not trying. I've said before that I need to make better decisions and understand the information that you need to make better decisions. I've said that on one side, and now what I'm saying on the other side is actually, your decision is almost less important than the way you choose to execute that decision. You know what I mean?
I get about it, because you can ruminate on the decision for a long time, you know, and actually make no progress. And I always think it comes back to this: it's like with the information you had at the time you had it, with the resources you had, did you make the right decision? And it's like generally the answer is always yes, right? Like no one's made, you know, like you may get it wrong, but like with the resources you had and the circumstances that you're in, did you make the best decision that you could? And normally it's yes. And so once a decision being made, it then is just. But I think before that, like above decision is attitude towards a challenge. You know, how am I coming at this? Am I coming at like you know, we've all had those days where you just feel like I'm on today, like I'm gonna, you know, and it's like when you feel like that, it's like that's your attitude. And when you come in with that attitude, like it's a different to like, oh God, I've got no idea what I'm gonna do here. You know, like we all know someone that's got a problem for every solution. You know, we all know someone that's got a solution for every problem. And it's like, as a business owner, you need to have the attitude that there's a solution for every problem, and you've got to help, you know, find that and then put effort into it. And that's not a natural thing for people. I think we have this negativity bias where it's easy to be like, oh, this is wrong and that won't work, and oh my God, you'll never be able to do that, you know, whether it's self-talk or someone else saying that. And so, you know, you've got to be proactive on your attitude. That's like, right, I'm going to figure it out. Someone who's got that attitude, even as an employee, like if that's the attitude, like, shit, I don't know what the answer's going to be, but I'm going to figure it out. It's like, that's where value is, and that's where progress comes from.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's I mean, Shivers, we've consolidated down, quite a bit down into, probably a 30-minute sort of discussion here. I think you've touched on a couple of times, but a lot of these lessons are sort of experiential lessons, and I think you've sort of got to go through them. But these are, for me, what makes up a strong, high-performing business. Know your product, make sure you get to the right people, drive those systems and processes around sales and mechanics, and show it with the right energy. I love some of the stuff you've talked about here, and I think the thread is it's always people. It really is. The thread here is it's surround yourself with the right people. Make sure you've got the right people on your team. I mean, I love working with you. I feel like you've changed the way I've done a lot of things. I think you just added so much value there too, and for me, a real multiplier in our business and what we're trying to create here. Because I think that's the other part of it too. We've touched on a little bit maybe, but it's like we don't want to get 10 years down the track, 20 years down the track, 30 years down the track and be like, oh, we created something amazing, but shit, I hated every minute of it, and so you're good at pulling me and making sure that I'm aware of that as well, because I don't want that, but I know my mindset often is I've got to figure it out, and so I think it's going to take more effort and just do more, and it's not always the right way. So getting people around you, I think that complement your strengths, but then really show up the things that you need to develop to make for a good ride is important too.
Yeah, I agree. And one interesting thing I heard recently was there's that whole thing like, what advice would you give yourself 10 years ago? And ironically, it's probably the same advice you need today still.
Yeah.
And so as much as I enjoyed this process thinking but I was reading them through, I was like, these are all really good reminders for me today, and probably the stuff that I need to remember and focus on more. And I think, I don't think these are unteachable lessons. It's a whole other conversation, unteachable lessons. But money won't make you happy is an unteachable lesson. It's it's really easy to say, and if you don't have money, but if you do have money, you can be like, I'm not happy. But it's almost good to have money to really truly believe that.
Yeah, well, the unhappy billionaires would show that actually money doesn't make you happy necessarily, does it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think one thing that you can sometimes. A lesson is reinforced more when it happens to you in person, but I do think you can expedite the process. Expedite. What do you the process by picking up from the quote I read you on the way here from Owen Eastwood, which is we're all destined to be a bunch of dumbasses unless we learn from the people that have come before us. And that's just permeated in my head for the last week or so, because I think we shouldn't be making the same mistakes that we made 10 years ago, and we shouldn't be making the same mistakes that someone else has made, in a similar position. So as much as some of these might be unteachable, I think we also have an obligation to keep learning and to keep growing and learning from the people that have come before us, because that's when you shouldn't have to make a mistake that you made 10 years ago or that you've seen someone else make. And I think you can listen to a podcast, or you can read a book, or you can watch a YouTube video about someone and you can see a mistake they made. And maybe you won't 100% avoid it, but it should decrease the likelihood that it has you drive into it front on.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And it's because there's sort of two parts to that. It's there's no problem that you're facing right now hasn't been faced before. No problem that you're facing right now hasn't been faced before somewhere in some other context. And so there's learnings that you could pull on from history. At the same time, make a decision and you'll get through it. Show up with the right attitude and energy. Even if you've got elements of doubt, if you put the right focus and bring the right energy and have the right people around you, even a decision that isn't perfect, you're gonna get through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's two things that sort of feed into one another.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Well, I think that we need to take this podcast, we need to release it, we need to send it to ourselves and we can listen to it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I think, I don't proclaim to be any, commercial expert, and I don't think you do either.
No,
but, I think that there's some interesting things here, and hopefully, they might help someone else going through a similar position, in the same way that I'm listening to a podcast at the moment with Rod Drury, the founder of Xero, and I listen because he talks about the mistakes he's made and things we did wrong, and there's some, and learn, that's a different scale, but I can still learn lessons. And so maybe that would be the sixth one, would be, to increase your leverage would be education.
Oh, yeah. I mean, anything that's building knowledge, skills, experience, that foundation within you, like that is leverage, I mean, because you never take it away.
Yeah.
The things that sit on top of that, I know we're talking about this whole Stephen Bartlett book, but, that gives you, having really good knowledge, skills, that gives you the opportunity to build good networks, which gives you resources, which ultimately builds your reputation, you know what I mean? And that's probably something we haven't talked a little bit about today too, but investing in yourself is always going to be worthwhile. Yeah,
it's a big return on investment, a lot of leverage there.
Yeah.
Love your work.
How good.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the OStudio podcast. If you enjoyed it, please hit the follow button wherever you're listening and connect with us on social media at OStudio Global. Our purpose at OStudio is to make recovery and well-being as accepted, understood, and as practiced as physical fitness. To achieve this, we're building premium wellness hubs around New Zealand where communities come together to sauna, ice bath, float, recover, and so much more. All in beautiful spaces designed for everyday people. Check out ostudio.co.nz to find a studio near you or explore how you could bring OStudio to your community. Own the moment.